I had somebody tell me at a Dr. Joe Dispenza event, you got diabetes because you lost the sweetness of life. And I was like, you are so right on.
Exactly what that person said is true, because what ends up happening too is that we end up checking boxes. Like we're just getting shit done on our to-do list. Like, I just need to get through this. Before you know it, you're like 70 and you're like, wow, did I literally just get through my life as opposed to be present?
Hello, hello, Heal Squad. Glad to be back with you guys today. I'm actually coming to you from the East Coast. We're going to start with our quote of the day, and it comes from our guest. So I'm very excited to share with you today. Give yourself permission to be the one who makes decisions for you. That, friends, is from Terri Cole. Give yourself permission to be the one who makes decisions for you. Damn, we farm that out to so many people, don't we? Anyway, Heal Squad, we are thrilled to have Terri Cole back with us today. If you don't already know, Terri is a renowned psychotherapist, relationship expert, and a best-selling author of the book Boundary Boss, which we had her on here for before. She's going to help us deep dive into her new book, Too Much, A Guide to Breaking the Cycle of High-Functioning Codependency. I always love this topic. I always love the topic of boundaries because they remind me of them and how I need to keep setting them, but also codependency. Terri brings such a refreshing perspective to self-empowerment, especially when it comes to freeing ourselves from patterns that keep us stuck. We're going to explore how these patterns show up in our daily lives and what small but really powerful steps we can take to break free. So friends, with that, I'm going to welcome Terri to the Heal Squad. Welcome, Terri.
Oh, and thanks for having me back. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Okay, well, when I first saw the book title, Too Much, I'm like, oh gosh, I've been told I was too much, I feel like. Maybe really only in my own head, but sometimes I feel like people tell you it with their, well, I had someone physically telling me while I was hosting the Today Show. That wasn't nice. But I have a lot of energy and it's not easy for people sometimes. But for listeners who are maybe unfamiliar, how would you explain high functioning codependency and why is it different than traditional codependency?
Okay, well, I coined the phrase because in my therapy practice, I had women like me and women like you and women like your listeners, women like the Heal Squad, super capable, highly functional women. So when I would say, "Oh, hey, I'm looking at a codependent behavior. This is what I'm noticing in this relationship," they would immediately be like, "Yeah, no, lady, I'm not dependent on anybody. Everyone's dependent on me." They're like, "I'm making all the money. I'm making all the moves. There's no way I'm codependent." So what I realized is that they didn't really know what codependency was. And they were being sort of unduly influenced by the original codependent no more, Melody Beatty. You have to be enabling an alcoholic to be a codependent, which is not true and not accurate. So the problem for me was, how can I help my clients heal, change behavior, do something different if they don't see themselves in the problem? So
Mm.
then I started really analyzing, the behaviors. What is it? And realized the irony of high functioning codependency is that the more capable you are, the less codependency looks like codependency, but it's still codependency. You know what I mean?
Okay, so now you're going to really lay it out because I'm so curious.
Uh-huh. Well, when I changed the name, when I added high functioning to codependency, what happened is that all of my clients miraculously were able to say, "I'm the problem, it's me," without shame, right? Without
Is
feeling
it
bad.
because high functioning makes us feel like um high functioning means you're very capable and you're, yeah, just super capable. So then the shame gets taken out of it.
Well, part of it is it's a different definition. When they understood, because I was also talking about the fact that we're still suffering though, because we're exhausted, because we're burnt out, because we're becoming angry and bitter in our relationships. There's all this cost for being a high functioning codependent. And it's even sneakier than regular codependency because it's hard to recognize. So I wrote an entire book about it because, I mean, listen, let's be honest, you teach what you most need to learn. And it was my own flavor of codependency in my life that I suffered from, and took years of therapy for me to even recognize or understand that what I was doing, all of my auto advice giving, over functioning, over giving, I thought it was like, because I'm Mother Teresa over here.
Oh my God.
And then, of
Wow.
course, it's not just purely out of love, because when you think about the foundation of any kind of codependency is an overt or a covert attempt to control other people's outcomes.
Yeah, I thought that was helping people.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm so
indeed.
screwed. Okay. This is why I love this show. I constantly am learning. So, okay. So we want to control. Is it we want to control in general? And this is just like a secret, nice way to do it? Do we not even realize we're like bad, I guess? I don't know.
It's not bad. We are highly capable. So let's actually just define high functioning codependency. So people are like, this is me or not.
Yeah.
I define it as you being overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the circumstances, the relationships, the finances, the careers of the people in your life to the detriment of your own internal peace. So we have to
Okay.
be
Well, that's
clear.
very, very important, that last part, because instantly I'm like, whoop, I am. Okay, well, now we have to decipher with who are you doing
Yes,
it to the point where it's a detriment.
yes.
That's really a fascinating distinction, I think, because I had someone in my life that I definitely took on like a little brother and just became so overly invested. And I
Hmm.
didn't realize it was to my detriment until we had a falling out and he was no longer in my life. And I realized, oh my God, I spent every waking minute worrying about this person. They didn't worry about me once.
Oh yeah. Because let's look at the that makes total sense then, Maria. Let's look at the what happens in these high functioning codependent relationships is that there is over functioning and under functioning. And
Okay, so
so,
what's the difference there?
well, you can see you exactly what you said about your former friend was that you were worrying about them all the time, thinking about them all the time, trying to problem solve for them all the time.
Oh my
They were
God,
not,
problem solve. Yes.
yes, can't wait, cannot wait to solve your problems.
Terry,
Uh,
it's like a game in my head. I meet a stranger and I'm constantly thinking how to solve whatever problem they just presented because I'm like addicted to solving problems.
yes,
Why?
because it makes us feel masterful. So let's start there because you're good at problem solving,
I love it.
right?
I wanted
So
to be MacGyver since I was a kid.
totally. This is what we are in our relationships though.
Mm.
So we there but here's the problem is that there's a compulsive element. Like when I talk about this online and even, people reading the book, people are like, "Well, what if I'm just nice, Terry?" Ever think of that? Maybe I'm just a good person. I'm like, "Here's the thing. If you can't not do it. If you are, and we're going to go over the traits and the behaviors because I feel like it'll make it clear, more clear for
Hmm.
people where they are. If you're an auto advice giver, exactly what you said, Maria. It could be a stewardess on on a plane that I'm giving advice to. It could be anywhere. There's no, for me when I was actively HFC as we call it, there was
High
no
functioning. HFC is high functioning codependent, guys.
correct. There was no, I mean, I was there was no discernment. I would
So wait, the woman
immediately.
who wrote Boundary Boss still needed this book probably to get to the final stage.
Yes. I mean, here's the
Wow.
thing. I was in recovery from high functioning codependency while I was writing this book, but it's one of those things, it's just like any other recovery where it is a daily discipline for me to not auto advice give to like perfect strangers on a train. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or
I've
whoever.
actually, I will say, and I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I will say, I have actively been trying to fix that because I've been saying, like, Maria, you're giving too much energy away.
Yes.
And I've actually actively been pulling back.
Amazing.
So maybe
Look at you.
I'm healing myself, but now this is going to take me to the next level.
It sure is. Because here's the thing, you're recognizing that there's a cost. for being that way. There's a cost for, and let's go through the traits. Do we feel overly responsible for other people's problems? Going above and beyond, giving till it hurts, doing things that people are not asking us to do some of the times, right? Always ready to jump into damage control mode. And we are like, HFCs are amazing in a crisis. I'm just saying.
Amazing. Yes.
Works.
My husband and I talk about it all the time. If you're in crisis, you call us. We know how to do it well.
That's correct. We also, though, can get frustrated or angry when other people don't take our grade A advice,
Yes, he
right?
gets
Because
really upset.
yeah, well, I understand because I was the same way where I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation with Betty again. I already gave her all the answers. If she would just friggin' do it, then life would be great
Yeah.
and she would stop complaining. Another telltale trait, though, is that we might feel exhausted. We might feel a little resentful. We might be kind of bitter in our relationships, right? Because when I was younger, I thought if my boss just wasn't a jerk, or if my boyfriend just hadn't cheated, or if my best friend hadn't whatever, and it was a very, astute therapist who was like, P.S., lady, guess who is the common denominator in all of those relationships? You. So I realized I felt like people were entitled or taking advantage of me. And in reality, I was serving myself up on a silver platter because I was over functioning and over giving and over feeling. So we have the behaviors themselves. Auto advice giving is one, being overly self-sacrificing. So think about this scenario. Let's just say you and your partner both have to go to work. And back in the olden days when people left their house to go to work. Okay, so he or she goes out first. There's a flat tire on one of the cars. Immediately, the HFC says, take the other one. I'll Uber. Just go. It's fun. Right? We can't stop. We just want to be like, keep the train moving. Just keep on going. It's fine. Again, self-sacrificing. Rather than saying to them, you call an Uber and I take the regular car and then you deal with the flat tire when you come home. It's almost like we're automatically doing it. Auto accommodating is another behavior. So I'm going to tell a quick story. I share it in the book, but this is how this came about, and this was only about 5 years ago. So let's be honest about how long it took me to get to this content for myself. I'm at a hair salon in Manhattan on a Saturday. I don't normally go on Saturday because it's insane, but I had to. So I have a mask in my hair and I'm laying in the sink. Now it's like a long mask. It's like a 30-minute mask and it's busy. So now every person who's waiting in line for a sink with their little robe on, I'm more and more stressed out. Every person waiting. I'm like, why am I taking up a sink? I could be sitting somewhere else. I don't even need to be at the sink. I could be. So I raise my hand, I have the assistant come over and I'm like, I could move. And she's like, yeah, we got it, Terri. We do this every Saturday. Like there was no need for me. Like, who did I think? Terri Cole. I need to figure out the sink flow at this very
Yeah.
successful salon.
Yeah. It's almost
I,
also too like it gives us attention too.
it does.
Fuck.
And being, it gives us attention, but again, the kind of attention we want, like we're the ultimate good
We're
girls. We're
getting the
the,
gold star.
exactly.
Oh my
I'm,
God,
I,
I want to die.
I could move. I could move. I don't mind. And the cost, Maria, let's look at the cost though. Even in that silly sort of scenario, what was the cost? Well, I could have been resting my exhausted brain, but I wasn't. I could have been listening to a podcast, but I didn't. Instead, I was hyper focused into my environment. And this is something that is a distinction for HFCs that a lot of times is different from just the garden variety codependency, is that we're so hyper vigilant about our surroundings and what is
Hmm.
happening. We're
Yep.
very well aware. If people are having a conflict over there, we're like, what can I do to
Yes.
distract from that?
Am
I
I
don't
going to
want
have to
that.
help them? Is this going to escalate? Am I going to have to like jump in? Is this person going to choke? Do I need to give them the Heimlich? Do I remember my CPR skills? I mean, crazy.
Yes, but you understand
A
what I'm
hundred
talking
percent.
about. Yes. All right. So another behavior we're going to talk about, and then we're going to talk about what people can do. But another behavior is anticipatory planning.
Oh yeah.
We know we're going to be with the difficult father-in-law, mother-in-law, parent, whomever. And we don't want there to be a problem. So we think of everything, the foods they love to eat, make sure we have the booze that they drink or their favorite wine, or we make sure they don't sit next to Uncle Jimmy because they hate him, whatever it is that we are literally puppeteering, right? We're like puppet mastering
Mhm.
situations. So that's anticipatory planning, which is also exhausting. Besides the regular stuff, which is just over functioning, just doing more than our share, doing more than is required. And, in that is inherent self abandonment.
Wow, wow, wow. So, little comic break. I used to tell Kevin that like my interpretation of me being an HFC was
Mhm.
Kevin turned me Catholic. So Kevin's Catholic. I was Greek. I had my shit straight. And then I
Yep.
married him and I became a Catholic. So that was how I interpreted like any of these little shifts where I did become so HFC. But he's worse. I actually still have a bit of a line where I remember I have his crazy story. His hair salon story was he I was firing an agent, and anytime I've had to fire someone, it's the worst. I hate it. I think I actually sabotage things so somebody will quit before I have
Yep.
to fire them because I hate doing it.
Yep.
So I had to fire an agent, and I'm on the phone. Kevin's in the car, and I'm just guttural crying. We're parked outside of this place, and then he had to run in and do something. He gets in the car, and it had been raining, and I didn't know anything had happened, but apparently he had fallen and slipped in the rain and fallen down these stairs and gashed his whole shin open, wide open, bones sticking out and all. He didn't make a
Ew.
peep. Didn't make a peep. I'm firing somebody. He doesn't make a peep. We drive 40 minutes home like that. I hang up the phone once we get in the driveway, and I look down, I see a little blood. I'm like, what's that? And I go, Kevin, what's happening? And he goes, everything's fine. I'm gonna get in the shower, just get me some super glue and some alcohol. I go, what? I get in the shower, his whole shin is exposed. I go, we're going to the hospital. We go to the hospital. Now that was a comment over accommodating, like number one, right?
Hmm.
He literally should have said, take me to the hospital right now, shut this phone off, fire them later or whatever.
Right.
We get to the hospital and he's in a room with someone else, and this little old man next door must have had dementia or something, and he's screaming and crying, and Kevin goes, literally, I mean 6 to 8 inches of it, like his whole shin is gashed open bone.
Yeah.
Go help him. I'm okay, I can wait. So
Yep.
I will say Kevin is definitely maybe the king of this, and I've definitely gotten some of it, um, some more of it from him. I'm sure a lot of it came from my family, but it's really wild to think how much energy we devote outside, how much we
Hmm.
could get back. And I think if we did the research to see how many HFCs have autoimmune conditions, I think they would
Oh,
be like completely connected.
absolutely. I actually write about this in the book about what happens to us. And when you're in your 20s, you don't even realize what you're doing, or you just think you could do it forever. But the thing is, there actually, we do have finite bandwidth. We actually do. And the reality is, when we look at like what happens, what is the cost of HFC? Like, why should we care, especially when we're so good at it? Do you know what I mean? Like, why
Yeah.
should we care to stop it? Because what ends up happening, there's a couple of things that I've seen. One is what I call living life light, LITE, where because we're so preoccupied psychologically, emotionally, mentally, because we're always thinking about other people and other things and what's next and how to make sure everything is okay, we're not fully present in our lives. So it means that life hits different, right? It's about half as juicy, half as sweet as it
Mm.
should be because we're living here too much.
I had somebody tell me at a Dr. Joe Dispenza event, it was kind of like not a mystic, but just somebody who was like enlightened. And she said, you got
Mm.
diabetes because you lost the sweetness of life. And I was like, you are so right on. Because life has just been about crisis and solving and
Yes.
rolling. And by the way, barely feel it because I'm just rolling to the next thing. And then I'm so good at it, I'm dealing with everybody else's. And
Yep. But it's the
yeah, I
box
gamified
checking.
it too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because you're like, I'm good at this. I can
I
figure
can
this
figure it
out.
out.
But But exactly what that person said is true, because what ends up happening too is that we end up checking boxes. Like we're just getting shit done on our to-do list. Like, I just need to get through this. I just need to get through that. Before you know it, you're like 70 and you're like, wow, did I literally just get through my life, as opposed to be present in my life? Because another one of the telltale signs of being an HFC is a certain amount of hyper independence, where we're not great at asking for help. Now, there's two types of relationships with HFCs, which is so interesting, because I just was on Jay Shetty's wife, Sadi, has a show called A Really Good Cry. Anyway, I was on there and I knew from their relationship, just what I've seen publicly, I was like, oh, they're both HFCs. And when we started talking, I said it and she was like, oh my God, totally. And it sounds like you and Kevin are both HFCs, and my husband and I are both HFCs. I feel like I couldn't have the only way I could ever marry someone and actually be vulnerable to them is if they were more capable than I am, more self-sacrificing than I am, more. Now, that's one type, and I almost feel like that's more fortunate than when you're an HFC, where you're really doing all the things and the other person is really not, where the over and under functioning dynamic has
Mm.
become the norm, because the cost to us in those relationships is definitely bitterness, is definitely burnout, the autoimmune stuff that you talked about, like the amount of autoimmune disease I've seen in my practice. And then you then add it to um, perimenopause and menopause.
Oh,
And
whoa. Where does that go?
people, well, here's the thing, we're just hitting a wall where the cycle of HFC and HFC recovery, if you don't do it sooner, the way I wrote the book, so people could do it sooner. You don't have to smash into that wall, right? But maybe you do. I don't know. So read the book, whether you smashed into the wall or not. But it's like the pendulum. We have too many F's to give to all the people for a long time. Too many F's, too many. And then after years and years and years, the pendulum swings and we have no F's to give for anybody. Now we're mad. It's not that we're in recovery, we're just pissed and we're like, I just don't give a crap. I just can't care. Almost where you hit that the dryness of the I've given it, I've left it all on the field, so to speak, but now I've got nothing for myself. So the process of getting back to middle, right? Because of course we want to care about the people in our lives, and
Yeah.
we don't want all of our relationships to be about other people, right? Part of what happens when we're constantly um, doing and directing and having ideas and thoughts about what other people should be doing. And instead of, let's look at what we can do instead, right? Because that's exhausting. Instead of auto advice giving, even if it's your natural thing, the moment there's a problem, I teach you in the book how to regulate your nervous system, because this is what must happen. Because this is a compulsion. We see a problem and we compulsively want to fix it, want to
Mm-hmm.
give advice. Instead, the first thing you're going to say to anyone who has a problem or who's complaining about something, instead of giving your grade A advice, you're going to say, okay, so what do you think you should do? And
Interesting.
then you're going to stop talking. And if they say, I don't know, I want to know what you think, because so much of the time we have trained people to expect our grade A advice coming right out the gate. If
Mm-hmm.
they say, I don't know, Maria, I want to know what you think, you can say, hey, I'll get to it. But really, the most important is what you think, because it's your life, right? And the truth is, even though I may have experiences and I'll share my experience with you, no problem, but really, nobody knows better than you. So the real flex in relationships, according to me, is to be able to be with people in the foxhole, in their dark night of the soul, without treating them like a project, without treating them like a problem that you have the power to fix, so to speak, because that fix is not long term. That makes you feel better in the moment. Like here, I gave you, I have the right oncologist for you. I have the right book for you. I have all the right things for you, which lets me avoid how uncomfortable I am with the pain that you're in.
Oh.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, because it's the first level, I think, is when you're uncomfortable with someone else's pain, is to shush them and say, don't cry, don't be sad, or try to
Yep.
distract. That's like
Yep.
maybe like entry level. And then we're kind of the next level where it's like, okay, let me fix this for you because I don't want to deal with it. Guys, before we continue on with Terri, I have to share one of my all-time favorite family traditions, which is the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. There's just something really magical about seeing those incredible floats every year. The balloons drifting through New York City while we prep for the big feast. And this year is going to be extra special because Minnie Mouse is making her parade debut. Athena's going to be so excited because she loves Minnie. So grab your coffee, your family, and cozy up for Macy's 96th annual Thanksgiving Day Parade live from New York City. You can catch it on NBC or stream it on Peacock from 8:30 a.m. to noon in all time zones. For all the details, you guys can just head to Macy's.com/parade. And then also, we got to talk self care from the top down, literally. With Way, I have finally found a hair care routine that feels like a treat and actually works wonders. Their products are designed for every hair type. So, whether you're looking for volume, shine, or that extra hydration boost, Way has you covered. You guys know my personal favorite is their hair oil, just a few drops with damp hair. My hair feels softer, smoother, and more manageable all day long. No more frizz. So if you're ready to invest in your hair and see results, head over to theway.com. That's THEOUAI.com. I feel like we should do like a fun thing with the Heal Squad listeners where they have to do their own version of THEOUAI.com because I really like saying that every time. Use the Heal Squad code, guys, and you'll get 15% off your order. Treat your hair to the care it deserves with Way. Back to Terri and this mind-blowing interview that I wish Kevin was a part of so he could hear it. He's on his way to Walmart making a return right now. Our favorite store, outside of Macy's, of course. But yeah, I love hearing, gosh, I love hearing that there are ways for us to kind of start retraining ourselves because
Mhm.
it's really not just refraining, it's retraining, right?
It is, because so much of this is learned behavior, which is great news. It means that we can unlearn it. And so much of this is we've taught people how to treat us. And now we're going to
Mm-hmm.
teach them something different, right? The origin of this experience for me, and I don't know if we talked about this the last time I was here, was I had a very painful experience with one of my sisters who was in a bad relationship, abusive, and I was in my 20s. And she was literally living in the woods without running water or electricity with a guy who was doing crack, who was being abusive to her, and she was an active alcoholic. So it's like an HFC nightmare 5 alarm fire every day, where, I mean, I was in a new relationship. I was a bonus mom to 3 teenage boys. Like, there was so much happening in my life. I had just become a therapist, and yet my focus was, I got to get her out of there. How am I going to get her out of there? And I remember talking to my therapist, Bev, and I was bawling my eyes out. It was like the 5th session in a row I was talking about this. And I was like, what am I going to do? I've done everything. Like, what am I going to do? And she just said to my face lovingly, Terri, let me ask you something. What makes you think you know what your sister needs to learn and how she needs to learn it in this lifetime? I was
That's
like, wow.
profound. And I think so many of us need to hear that for so many of our situations.
Right, because the feeling, right? Anyone listening could say, oh, well, that's ridiculous. What I said to my therapist was, well, I think we can agree she doesn't need to do it with a crackhead in the woods without running water. Like, can't she? Is that how she has to learn it? And Bev said to me, my therapist, Tara, I actually can't agree because I don't know what your sister needs to learn because I'm not God. So I was like, so what do I do then? Right? If it's not going to be this where it's dominating my life. And she said, you need boundaries. And that was the beginning of me even being like, boundaries? What the hell are they? What?
Wow.
And she said, you don't need to talk to your sister about this guy. You can set a boundary. So anyway, I did. I said to her, hey, listen, I can't talk about this and I can't be in this much contact. It's so painful, but I love you. And if you ever want to get out, I'll always be your person, like always. Less than 9 months later, she called and was like, hello, are you still my person? And I was like, getting in my car. Now I pick her up She gets into recovery. She goes back to school. She becomes a CNA, which is certified nurse's assistant. Like, she does all of this. So instead of her littlest sister putting on the cape and saving her, instead of this being centered on me and my heroics, she got to be the hero of her own story.
Mm-hmm.
And it required me tolerating how I felt about. I was terrified that something really horrible was going to happen to her. And yet, what my therapist said that changed everything for me is she said, listen, Tara, I'm not saying you shouldn't save your sister. I'm saying you can't. It's an impossibility. And do you know why you want to? And I was like, no. And she's like, listen, you've spent all this time creating a harmonious life, right? You've had a lot of therapy. You got into recovery young. Your sister's dumpster fire is really messing with your peace. And you want to fix her so your peace can be restored. I was like, not exactly the Mother Teresa motivation I thought I was coming from, but
Mm-hmm.
you are not wrong. It is true.
Wow. That takes a lot of discipline too when you're an HFC.
Oh, but I got permission though, Maria. It was like my therapist, who I
Yeah.
trusted very deeply, had been in therapy for years. I trusted that what she was saying was true. And I felt so relieved. Like, oh, you mean it's not on my side of the street to save her from her bad choices, from
Yeah.
her illness, from her all the things? And the answer was no, it's not. It wasn't on my side of the street. And she's my sister. That was decades ago. My sister's never been in another abusive relationship. She's been sober since. It's like, would it
Wow.
have stuck if I quote unquote saved her? And the answer is no. And it's very hard to look at the fact that we're centering ourselves in the other person's situation. But when you ask expansive questions and you be quiet and you let people talk, you're not centering yourself, you're centering them and being supportive and actually holding space. People love to say this phrase, holding
Yeah.
space. That's what it really is. It's like, tolerate the way how uncomfortable you are, hold space, and be compassionate with the people in our lives without fixing them.
Wow. Um, you talk about building self-respect through boundaries. So I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of this requires boundaries with ours for ourselves and for everyone else. So can we close out this episode with a little bit of that so we can understand um, where to go?
Yeah. With the boundaries, what's interesting is that Boundary Boss, the first book, it was a lot of teaching people how to make other people respect our boundaries. The humbling realization in Too Much, this book, is that when we're active HFCs, we can be the boundary tramplers inadvertently,
Wait,
not on
we're
purpose,
the
but
boundary tramplers.
yeah,
Yeah, makes
because
sense.
if yeah, it does. And listen, don't feel bad if this is you. This is all of us, right? Understand that your heart is in the right place. I have no doubt, as was mine. But it doesn't change that people have a right to be autonomous, that people have a right to succeed and fail, to thrive or flail. And when you're an HFC, we do not like people flailing. We don't like it. We would like you to get it together as soon as possible, please. And that is not for us to say. So, with the boundaries, if we really want to be mindful, it's understanding that I think the first step for people who identify as being HFC, there's two things that we can start with. One is, instead of auto advice giving, you're going to ask people what they think they should do. And then you're going to let there be a silence. And if they say they don't know, you say, okay, but if you did know, what would it be? Take a stab. Let's just spitball it. What does your
Because that
gut say?
makes them have to think. It
Yes.
makes them have to be reflective, something they're probably not doing. And then the answers are always within us.
Yes.
Yeah, we can use some guidance and some all of that, but the main answers should be within us, right?
Yes.
And
And the
it
thing
goes
is,
back to
yeah.
our opening quote, give yourself permission to be the one who makes decisions for you.
Yes.
Hmm.
Correct. The other thing that people can do, if they're like, I wonder where I'm being HFC in my relationships, how will I know? Well, you can do a very quick resentment inventory, which I think we might have talked about last time, but this is something that's very useful in all areas, because where you're feeling resentful, you're probably overfunctioning. You're probably overgiving. And this is where your boundaries for yourself will come in. Where this is internal boundaries, is like the work that we need to do as HFCs.
Okay. Wow. That was a lot of information to take in. Heal Squad, we're going to pause here for today. Terri has already shared so much about recognizing our patterns and breaking free from HFC. But trust me, we're going to dive into more in part two. We're going to get deeper on how to stop overfunctioning, how to handle pushback from loved ones. Because once you start making changes, people are used to you figuring it out. You're the one who has to handle everything. So we're going to figure out that, learning how to trust ourselves more. So if you're ready to reclaim your energy like me, your self-worth, make sure you guys join us for the next part of this conversation with Terri Cole. You don't want to miss it. In the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present. Hey, Heal Squad. We have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or MariaMenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.